battlefields of World War II were remembered for tanks rolling across shattered landscapes, the thunder of artillery, and the relentless crack of rifles. But for countless soldiers, one of the deadliest enemies bore no uniform at all. It was the cold quiet, merciless, and ever-present. On the Russian front, temperatures plunged so low that breath froze mid-air and rifles stiffened in men's hands. In the Ardennes, troops fought the German army. Yes, but they also fought frostbite. Creeping through boots and gloves and across the mountains of Italy and the Balkans, icy winds howled through valleys, turning every night into a test of endurance few were prepared for. Official histories talk about strategies, victories, and defeats. They map the movements of armies and the outcomes of battles. But behind those grand narratives lay an invisible war, the nightly struggle simply to survive until morning. Many soldiers carried only a thin blanket or a wool coat. Fires were forbidden, bedding was scarce, and with frontline positions constantly shifting, comfort was a luxury no one could rely on. And so, in the face of unrelenting cold, men turned to ingenuity, improvisation, and the quiet wisdom passed from soldier to soldier in whispers. One of the first lessons learned on frozen ground was that the earth, though bitterly cold on the surface, could become an ally. By digging shallow pits, small foxholes, or tiny depressions in the soil, soldiers shielded themselves from the slicing wind. Diaries from German and Soviet troops on the Eastern Front are filled with mentions of these sleeping pits, not comfortable, not warm, but survivable. Beneath even a few inches of earth, the temperature stabilized, and where the ground was too hard to dig permafrost turned shovels, useless men built low walls from packed snow, creating crude shelters that broke the wind's sibilant force. As armies moved through occupied farm country, soldiers discovered what peasants had known for generations. Straw could save a life. Barns and haystacks became treasure troves, not just for food but for insulation. A thick layer of straw beneath a soldier's body created a barrier of warm air, preventing the icy ground from draining heat. Letters home from American troops in France described the sheer relief of sleeping in barns, even with lice and pests. Compared to open snow, a pile of hay felt like heaven. Then there were the improvisations, so strange they sounded like myth, but were confirmed again and again by veterans. One method involved dampening canvas or tarp, laying it across coats or blankets, and letting it freeze. The outside layer hardened into a stiff crust of ice, while the inside remained warm, a frozen shell wrapped around a living body. Some men from the Battle of the Bulge recalled nights lying beneath these makeshift shields, unable to move much, but safe from the penetrating air that would have stolen their warmth. Because open flames at night were too dangerous, they could expose a position in an instant. Soldiers carried heat in other ways. During the brief moments when they cooked or warmed rations, they heated stones by the fire, wrapped in cloth and tucked into bedding. Those stones radiated warmth for precious minutes, sometimes long enough for a man to drift into sleep before the cold returned. Survival was rarely a solitary act. Human warmth became a weapon. Soldiers huddled together beneath shared blankets or greatcoats, forming tight bundles of bodies to conserve heat. They slept in shifts, resting, one awake to adjust covers, check surroundings, or simply keep an eye on the night. After an hour or two, they rotated. This rhythm, sleep, guard, rotate, kept entire squads alive through nights that would have killed them alone. In some of the coldest regions, men discovered a counterintuitive truth. Snow itself could protect them. Snow caves and shallow snow beds, used by Arctic peoples for centuries, became part of frontline survival. Soviet diaries describe men burying themselves under snow with only their faces exposed. Inside that snowy cocoon, the temperature was surprisingly stable. It wasn't comfortable, and it wasn't safe, but it was life-saving. A soldier's boots, however, were as important as his rifle. If left outside at night, boots froze solid, so stiff they couldn't be forced on in the morning. Soldiers learned to keep them inside their bedding, even if it meant cold mud pressing against their skin. Countless veterans recalled the miserable warmth of sleeping next to wet leather, but it prevented frostbite and kept them ready to move at dawn. A frozen boot could disable a soldier as effectively as a bullet. Scarcity pushed men into constant innovation. Captured enemy coats, horse blankets, and even parachute silk were reused as sleeping gear. Parachute fabric was especially coveted. It blocked wind, held warmth, and lined countless foxholes across Europe and Asia. Sandbags, stuffed with leaves or straw, became makeshift mattresses. Anything that could insulate, protect, or block wind was put to use. And beyond the physical techniques, there was a mental battle. Soldiers trained themselves to fall asleep quickly, regulating their breathing to conserve energy. They told stories, whispered songs, repeated the same prayers night after night, anything to distract themselves from how cold their bodies felt. Officers encouraged these rituals, knowing that morale was the thin line between endurance and collapse. In the darkest nights, the mine became as vital a shelter as any foxhole. The frozen ground of World War II claimed thousands of lives, quietly and without fanfare, but countless others survived because of these simple, unglamorous hacks. Digging into the earth, insulating with straw, freezing canvas into armor, heating stones, sharing warmth, burying in snow, protecting boots, repurposing anything at hand, and mastering the mental fight against the cold. They rarely appear in textbooks. They are overshadowed by tanks and bombers, but they were as essential to survival as ammunition or food. And when we remember them, we gain a deeper understanding of what survival truly meant. That resilience was not only brute strength, it was adaptation. It was creativity in the face of misery. It was the determination to see another sunrise, no matter how bitter the night. If these forgotten experiences enrich your understanding of what soldiers endured, continue exploring with us, because history I senti only battles it est, the quiet struggle to stay alive when the world turns cold.